Hello, Eli. You are up next, sir.
Hi, Bart. How you doing?
How's it going? Where are you playing out of, Eli?
Playing out of Maryland Live.
So, Maryland Live, place I have played at, but not in a long time. I always think about Michael Phelps. I think he was there the last time I played at Maryland Live. I don't know if he plays poker anymore, but he used to a lot.
Haven't seen him.
Okay, what's the size of the game?
It's a 1-3 game, the 400 cap,
1-3-400 cap. Okay.
and I have everyone covered at the table. But the main villain, I'm about 750 effective with him.
All right, so pretty deep for this game, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll give a little bit of context on the villain. So we're two of the youngest guys in the room, both in our early 20s. I played with him several times. Definitely a solid player for 1-3. We've gotten into some good battles in the past.
Okay.
And I just sat down at this table also after my table broke upstairs.
Okay.
So there's a middle position limp, and I have ace of clubs, 8 of diamonds on the button, and I open a 15.
Just something of a little bit of note. I don't usually ISO. I mean, obviously, if it was suited, I would. I mean, that's kind of like my break off point here. I mean, I know that I will say, because I usually, our approach on CLP is usually when you're looking to sort of for like isolation types of situations, I always say like just ignore the limp and open the hand that you would normally open. Once it gets to 2 limps or more, you can start developing an over limping range. And I usually say like 2 or 3 people limp in front. If I'm in late position, I usually only raise the types of holdings that I would raise from the first couple positions, like a strong range. And then I sometimes will develop like an over limp range. But a lot of times with 1 limp, you can ISO people. Because I was going to say, I'm not a huge fan of like ace 8 off, but going with what, our approach there, I don't think it's that bad. But I mean, it starts to get way too loose if like 2 people limped. I mean, I assume you're going to straight open ace 8 off on the button if it got folded to you, right?
For me, the limper was a player that I wanted to get involved with in hands. I could tell just by the first few hands that I've been watching. So that kind of played into it.
So you go to 15, okay?
And the big blind, who was the main villain in the hand, and the limper call.
All right, so big blind and limper call. And now you're at like $45. We'll call it 3 ways, okay?
Yep. And the flop comes out. The ace of diamonds, 8 of clubs, deuce of clubs.
So you flop top 2.
Yep.
Ace of diamonds, 8 of clubs, deuce of clubs. Hero actually has the ace of clubs in his hand too. Blocking nut flush draw. Okay.
And it checks to me. And I bet just over half pot, 25. And the big blind calls, and the middle position guy folds.
All right. So MP folds, big blind calls. You have top 2 here. And again, just positional awareness. I know that sometimes people make calls that are not correct, but I mean, I think that this guy really should be leaned towards a lot of ace X here in the big blind. And the reason why is because he's got a guy behind him. So, I mean, obviously he could have some sort of flush draw here too, but you've got the ace of clubs. But he really, really leans towards having ace X here because you really shouldn't be calling with a hand like 7-8 with a guy c-betting into 2 people. And then if you're in the big blind with the guy to your left, I mean, that becomes a call if your head's up, but not 3 ways. So I like your spot, and I'd be, try to get as much money in the pot on blanks for sure later on in the hand. All right, so 95 to the turn.
The turn is the 6 of hearts.
Okay.
Big blind checks. And here I should have won a little larger, I think. In hindsight, I bet 50.
Yeah, I would be going close to pot here, without a doubt. Without a doubt. It's just one of these things, too. If you look at the texture of the board here as well, kind of find it interesting in terms of like the types of suited hands that people are going to play. Like this misses all the Broadway flush draws, like Queen Jack of clubs, Jack 10 of clubs. But if he's calling with some suited connecting types of like middling cards, you're going to have a lot of pair plus flush draw, pair plus straight draw represented. So when you take a look at that flop calling range, heavily weighted towards ace X and draws, you can just size up to pot here. You don't care about the Broadway club draws. And I would probably be betting 100 with a big chip. I mean, that's a CLP thing. I don't know at this level. Sometimes do you play with $100 chips in this game, or is it just 25?
Yeah, at this time I had 4 or 5.
So when I say chip spiking, and I've seen this on like Poker Reddit and stuff, I mean, it's definitely a term that I have come up with. What I mean by chip, and it really should probably be pot spiking, I like to make value bets like in a situation like this with oversized large chips. And the reason why I do that is because a lot of players at the lowest level, they're not calculating pot size. So if you can look at this situation and you're using all $5 chips and you go to bet like 90 or 100, and the guy isn't calculating pot size, right? And he calls. Well, we know the pot's going to be like 300, but it's going to be a big mound of $5 chips. He has no idea how big it is. But if you use a $100 chip and he calls, he's going to know that the pot's 300 just because he can see the chip that's in there. I mean, that's something that I always used at 510 Commerce when we actually used to just play with $5 chips and $100 chips. They introduced $25 chips later on, but it was a pretty big extreme. So I would have gone close to pot. You go 50.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree, and I kind of realized that immediately.
So big blind calls?
No, he check raises to 125. And first off, do you think there's any merit to 3-betting here?
Well, he check raises to 125, so you go 50, and he makes a really, really small check raise. I mean, normally what this would indicate with you showing so much strength is I think it indicates more value. See, it's interesting because you look at two different scenarios, because if somebody makes like a very small check raise on the flop, like say it was ace-8 deuce and this guy went 125, I would be like, oh, wow, that's very indicative, especially on a non-ace board. Like if it was, say it was like a jack-7 deuce on the flop, you see bet and a guy made it 125, I'd be like, wow, that's a lot of like king-jack trying to protect. And we can use that sort of school of thought if we have better than king-jack on like jack-7 deuce on how we want to play it. However, this is a situation where he's making a very small check raise on the turn after you've bet twice. And I actually think that leans itself more towards strength, because if you look and say like, oh, what if he's got like 7-9 of clubs here, which is like a 15-out draw? People, if they're going to check raise with that, I don't think would take this type of sizing. They would try to do more sort of like max fold equity. So, and even with ace-6, I mean, here's another thing too. What does the 6 change? Right? I mean, we don't think he's going to have pocket 6s after you bet into 2 people. He could have ace-6, but if he's not calling, and again, it's a small stakes game, let's say that he's only calling with ace-6 suited. Look back at your hand. You've got the ace of clubs in your hand, the ace of diamonds and the 6 of hearts is out there. There's only one combo of ace-6 suited, which is ace-6 of spades. And then, of course, you got to go back and you're like, well, deuce-deuce, right? There's 3 combos of deuce-deuce. That's probably fairly viable as a hand that would take this type of sizing.
Against this particular player, I doubt he would. I would expect to hear from deuce deuce on the flop with that type of flop texture and the player behind him.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's 2 clubs, but it's not like it's.
Yeah, it's not super.
It's not. I mean, I could see people calling here. So
there's an ace high board. I mean,
yeah. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not saying I fold here, but I would proceed with caution. And I don't know if I'm doing a whole lot of 3-betting here, just because again, that 6 doesn't really change much except for ace-6. We said there's only one combo of ace-6 suited, and there is one combo of 8-8 too that he maybe just plays like this. So you're looking at 4 combos. You have an 8 in your hand, so there are 4 combos of viable sets here. So I would probably do a lot of calling here.
Yeah, and that's what I did.
All right, so you put in 250. So the pot on the turn here. So the pot here is what, 345, and it looks like you guys have maybe like 600 left.
Yeah, a little bit less, like 580, I think it was.
Okay.
And the river is pretty disastrous, 9 of clubs.
Well, it's disastrous, but if he was raising on the come, but again, I do wonder. It just doesn't seem like a sizing that's all that indicative of raising on the come. Okay.
Sure. I should say disastrous once he bets another 200 into me. At that point, I felt as if he had no real bluffs left. Like anything that he might be bluff raising with on the turn has gotten there. I mean, like maybe 5-7 of diamonds he's floating with on the flop with a guy behind, something like that. Even gets there.
That's insane. That would be insane. But yeah.
At this point, I don't think I'm beating anything that continues on that river.
Yeah, I think this is probably just a fold here. You have the ace of clubs in your hand, so we can't have the nut flush, but you guys you said you started with just under 600, so there's not that much left if you were ever thinking about doing something here, if that's what you're thinking about doing, which would be a pretty rare situational like turn, like, a hand like what was top two pair into a bluff. It's more of a PLO type of situation. But if you were trying to think about doing something like that, I would want to be a lot deeper because it's only going to be 400 more for the guy, right? If you were thinking about doing something like that.
Yeah, I'm giving him 3-1.
So what did you do?
Well, I mean, so I think that, I mean, this is exactly how I would likely play the nut flush, and obviously I'm holding the ace of clubs. So I kind of had already committed on the turn to making this play if front door clubs got completed. So I actually did end up turning my hand into a bluff. And
So before you tell us the results, though, I mean, when we look at the hand reading and what I talked about, and people were watching this on YouTube can pull it back, the play in itself has validity if you believe what my contention was about the turn raising range here and what the sizing means. Meaning that it's not like combo draws, that it's going to be a lot of sets of deuces and eights. Now, to play Oxum Razor with you or just to be as simple as possible, I don't like to move people off of sets at this level, especially when you don't have that much money left. Because if you raise all in here, the pot's going to be, 1145, and it's going to be, 400 for him to call. And I don't know if somebody's folding a set of deuces or a set of eights here. Now, obviously, it's the front door side. The front door clubs have come in, and obviously the ace is not a club out there because you have the ace of clubs in your hand. But for those reasons, if you had like a hand like ace, queen of clubs here instead of, say, ace eight off, it would be a clear-cut jam, and I would be jamming even when I'm deeper, expecting a lot of these types of strong hands that are worse than flushes to call. But for those reasons, probably wouldn't do a whole lot of bluffing in this particular spot. But I would say that his hand, the way that this one has played out, probably is a set a lot. But then the question is, do you want to try to move people off of sets at this level?
yeah, I mean, him, again, against a specific opponent, I think that he would probably find a fold with a set. I was pretty confident in that. And then I even think he might even fold out some very weak flushes, but that is probably a little too ambitious.
It's funny because there's some people are saying that you should call.
No, that never crossed my mind, personally.
I don't know what you beat, yeah.
Everything that he's raising with on the turn gets there, and it's just, I don't see any hand that he continues with on this river that I beat. I don't think there is one.
So you did shove, hero shoves.
I do shove, and he was immediately not happy, but he did eventually end up flicking in the call with 5-3 of clubs.
5-3 of clubs. Okay, so big blind calls with 5-3 of clubs, which, I mean, we can't necessarily deduce whether or not he's going to fold the set just because he's calling here with 5-3 of clubs. So this was one of these ones where he actually turned a combo draw, right? He had a combo draw in the form of not a double gutter, but he turned a wheel flush draw. I have to tell you, I'm actually quite shocked by the small sizing. I definitely would have expected a combo draw like that to raise larger. Maybe he thought that putting, like, what do you do with ace king on the turn? Just let me ask you this question. Like, what do you do with ace king on the turn?
And I'm still holding the ace of clubs.
Well, no, let's say you're not holding the ace of clubs.
If I'm not holding the ace of clubs, I'm probably calling.
Mm-hmm.
I think. I mean, it's just such a small sizing.
Right.
I mean,
that's why it surprises me, like, that he took that type of sizing, because
yeah, I've seen him do things like this before. I will say with semi bluffs, taking smaller sizings, maybe getting a little bit scared of putting too much in with nothing. So that kind of set alarm bells off that he might actually not be that strong against this particular player.
Let me ask you a question. I'm just curious, right? Because I can count probably first of all, how long have you been playing live poker for?
I've been playing on and off since I turned 21, but over this past year, I play several times a week.
Okay, so several years. Is this the strongest hand that you've ever turned into a bluff that you can remember?
Yes,
Okay,
definitely.
because I was going to say it's a little. It's probably would be. It's a very rare spot to turn something this strong into a bluff in Hold'em. But I appreciate the call. Thank you very much.